It was nearing dusk when I first heard the sound, soft at first, like the faintest echo of heartbreak. I almost didn't notice it over the hum of the bustling street, but as I approached the corner, the sound grew louder. A child sobbing. Turning down a dimly lit alley, I found him. A boy, no older than 6, sitting on the cold pavement with his knees pulled to his chest. His small body trembled, and his face was streaked with dirt and tears. His clothes were too thin for the cool evening, tattered and grimy as if he'd been wandering for days. "Hey there," I called out softly, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay?" At the sound of my voice, he flinched, his head snapping up. His eyes, wide, dark, and filled with terror, locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. "I won't hurt you," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. "I just want to help. Are you lost?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze darted around the alley as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "Please don't let them find me." A chill ran down my spine. "Who's after you?" I asked, trying to keep my own fear from showing. "The bad men," he said, his voice cracking. "They took my mom." Those 6 words shattered me. Without hesitation, I reached out my hand. "Come with me," I said. "You're safe now." The boy hesitated, his small hand trembling as he reached for mine. When his fingers finally clasped mine, I felt how cold they were. Too cold for such a little boy. "What's your name?" I asked as we walked toward my apartment, his steps faltering with exhaustion. "Oliver," he murmured. "I'm Catherine," I said, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. "We'll figure this out, okay?" Oliver didn't respond, but he clung to me like a lifeline. When we got to my apartment, I led him inside and immediately wrapped him in a blanket. He sat on the couch, watching me cautiously as I rummaged through the kitchen for something to feed him. "Do you want soup?" I asked, holding up a can. He nodded, his big eyes never leaving mine. As he ate, I sat across from him, trying to piece together what little he'd told me. "Can you tell me more about the bad men?" I asked gently. Oliver shook his head, his grip tightening around the spoon. "They'll hurt us if I tell," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one's going to hurt you," I promised. "You're safe here." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if it was true. That night, as Oliver slept on the couch, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Its engine idled, and though I couldn't see the driver, I could feel their eyes on my apartment. My gut told me this wasn't a coincidence. Couldn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, the dim glow of the streetlights illuminating the black SUV parked across the street. It didn't move, the engine humming faintly in the quiet night. Every so often, the curtain would twitch, and I'd catch myself scanning the room, paranoid that they'd somehow see Oliver inside. He looked so small curled up on the couch, his little chest rising and falling with each breath. Morning came slowly, and with it, a renewed sense of dread. Oliver stirred awake as sunlight streamed through the blinds. He blinked at me, his face still pale but softer now, less guarded. "Are they still out there?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I hesitated before responding, not wanting to scare him. "I don't know," I admitted, "but they can't hurt you here." He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press the matter. After breakfast, I gave him some crayons and an old sketch pad I had lying around, hoping it would keep his mind occupied. As he drew quietly at the table, I tried to figure out what to do next. Calling the police seemed like the logical option, but something about Oliver's fear gave me pause. What if the people after him were powerful enough to infiltrate even the authorities? My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. My heart jumped into my throat as I glanced through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood on the other side, his expression unreadable. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice muffled but firm. "We need to talk about the boy." My hand froze on the doorknob. How did they know my name? My stomach churned as the man knocked again, louder this time. "I know you're in there," he said, his tone growing sharper. "This isn't a negotiation." I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Who were these people? How did they find us so quickly? Oliver, I whispered, crouching beside him at the table. His eyes widened at the fear in my voice. I need you to hide. Okay? Right now. Go to the bedroom and lock the door. He nodded without a word and scampered away, clutching his sketchpad to his chest. The knocking turned into pounding. If you don't open this door, we'll come in ourselves. Desperation overtook me. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. There's a man outside my door, I said, my voice trembling. He's trying to break in. The operator assured me officers were on the way, but I knew it might be too late by then. Last chance, the man barked. I grabbed a heavy candlestick from the table, my heart pounding as the door burst open. 2 men stepped inside, their faces cold and calculating. One of them spotted me immediately and lunged. I swung the candlestick with all my strength, catching him across the jaw. He staggered back, cursing, but his partner advanced. Before he could reach me, the wail of police sirens filled the air. The men exchanged glances before retreating, slamming the door behind them. After the police left, assuring me they'd increase patrols, I locked every window and double-checked every door. But their reassurances felt hollow. Oliver emerged from the bedroom, his face pale. Are they gone? He asked, his voice trembling. For now, I said, pulling him into a hug. But we need to figure out what's going on. That evening, as Oliver slept, I searched through his small backpack again, hoping for answers. That's when I found it. A battered leather journal with pages filled with hurried notes. The first page was covered in strange symbols, followed by a list of names. Michael Gray, Elena Brooks, Arthur Kane. Flipping further, I found scattered entries written in shaky handwriting. They're watching us. Gray Phoenix is everywhere. Trust no one. A chill ran down my spine as I realized this wasn't just a child running from a bad situation. This was something far darker and more dangerous than I'd imagined. The next morning, I called Jacob, an old friend and investigative journalist. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy. Catherine? It's been a while. I need your help, I said, skipping the pleasantries. It's about a boy I found. He's in trouble, and there are people after him. People like who? I hesitated, then explained everything, the black SUV, the men who broke in, the journal. Jacob listened in silence, but when I mentioned the name Arthur Kane, his tone changed. Kane is bad news, he said. He's tied to a syndicate called Gray Phoenix. Trafficking, money laundering, political manipulation, you name it, they do it. What does that have to do with Oliver? My guess? His mom stumbled onto something they didn't want her to see. If they're after him, it's because he's a loose end. Jacob agreed to dig into the journal, and within hours, he called me back with a lead. There's a name in there, Elena Brooks. She used to work for Gray Phoenix before she blew the whistle on one of their operations. I found an address. That evening, I drove across town to meet Elena. The address led me to a small, rundown apartment complex. I knocked on the door, and a woman answered, her face pale and drawn. Elena, I asked. She glanced at me warily. Who are you? I held up the journal. I'm a friend of Lily. She's in trouble, and so is her son. Elena's expression softened. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. If Lily's in trouble, we don't have much time. Elena led me into her cramped apartment, where every window was covered with thick curtains, and every door had multiple locks. She moved quickly, her hands trembling as she cleared off a cluttered table. Sit, she said, motioning to a chair. You said Lily's son is with you? Is he safe? For now, I said. But men broke into my apartment last night looking for him. They mentioned something about Gray Phoenix. At the name, Elena froze. Her eyes darted toward the window as if she expected someone to burst through at any moment. They don't stop, she said, her voice low. Once you're on their radar, they'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Lily must have found something huge for them to come after her like this. She left behind this journal, I said, sliding it across the table. It has names, dates, symbols. I was hoping you could help me make sense of it. Elena flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing. This isn't just a journal. It's a roadmap. These names, Michael Gray, Arthur Kane, they're some of the most powerful people in Gray Phoenix. If Lily documented their operations, she's sitting on a goldmine of evidence. Then why hasn't she gone to the authorities? I asked. Because Gray Phoenix has people everywhere, Elena said bitterly. Police, politicians, even the media. You can't trust anyone. That's why Lily ran. She knew they'd kill her before she could expose them. Do you think she's still alive? Elena hesitated. If they haven't found what they're looking for yet, maybe. But if you have her son. She trailed off, her meaning clear. I felt a cold pit of fear settle in my stomach. They'll stop at nothing to get to him, I said. Elena nodded. And now they'll come for you, too. After a tense silence, Elena stood and crossed the room to a small safe hidden behind a loose floorboard. She opened it and retrieved a small flash drive. This, she said, holding it up, is what Lily risked everything for. It's a complete record of Gray Phoenix's operations, transactions, names, locations. It's enough to take them down. Why haven't you used it? I asked. Elena's face hardened. Because if I did, I'd be dead. I barely escaped the last time I tried to expose them. And if they ever find out I still have this. She didn't need to finish the sentence. I took the flash drive from her, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. What do we do with it? Elena sighed. You need to get it into the hands of someone you trust. But be careful. Once they know you have this, they'll come after you with everything they've got. I left Elena's apartment with the flash drive tucked securely in my bag. Driving back to the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every car that lingered behind me felt like a threat. Every shadow a potential ambush. When I arrived, Oliver ran to me, his small arms wrapping tightly around my waist. I thought you weren't coming back, he said, his voice trembling. I'll always come back, I said, ruffling his hair. That night, I examined the flash drive, its contents confirming everything Elena had said. It was all there, proof of human trafficking, political corruption, money laundering. And at the center of it all was Arthur Kane, the shadowy figure who seemed to control everything. I knew then that this wasn't just about keeping Oliver safe. This was about taking down an empire. The next morning, the peace of the cabin shattered. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Peeking out the window, I saw 2 black SUVs pull up, and my heart dropped. Oliver, I called, keeping my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. Go to the closet and stay there until I come for you. Don't make a sound. He obeyed without question, his small face pale with fear. Moments later, the front door burst open, and 3 men stormed in. Where's the boy? One of them barked, his eyes scanning the room. You're not taking him, I said, stepping forward. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. The man smirked. You really think you can stop us? I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed the frying pan from the stove and swung it with all my strength, catching him across the face. He stumbled back, cursing, but his companions advanced. The fight was chaotic, but adrenaline and sheer desperation kept me going. Just as one of the men cornered me, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The men fled, leaving the cabin in disarray. The police arrived minutes later, their flashing lights illuminating the wreckage. I explained what had happened, but their skepticism was clear. You really think these men were after the boy? One officer asked. I don't think, I said. I know. The officers promised to increase patrols in the area, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. Gray Phoenix wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. That night, as Oliver clung to me, I made a decision. We couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. It was time to go on the offensive. With the flash drive in hand, I knew our only chance was to expose Gray Phoenix publicly. But doing so without getting caught or killed was going to take careful planning. I called Jacob. I need your help, I said. This flash drive has everything. Names, transactions, locations. If we can get it out to the public, we can take them down. That's risky, Jacob said. If they realize what you're doing, they'll come for you, and fast. I don't have a choice, I replied. They're going to keep coming anyway. Jacob agreed to meet us at a remote location. It wasn't safe to stay at the cabin any longer. I packed what little we had, grabbed the flash drive and journal, and left before sunrise. The drive to Jacob's location was tense. Every car on the road felt like a threat, and Oliver's silence in the back seat only made the tension worse. When we arrived, Jacob greeted us with a grim expression. "You weren't followed?" he asked. "I don't think so," I said. But as we began to discuss the plan, headlights appeared in the distance. My heart sank. "They found us," I whispered. Jacob grabbed his laptop, hastily setting up the live stream we had planned for days later. "If we're going to do this, we do it now," he said. I nodded, helping him upload the files while Oliver hid behind the couch. As the files began to upload, Jacob started narrating everything. The names, the crimes, the corruption. He broadcasted live on every platform he could, sharing the evidence with the world. "They're here," I shouted as I saw SUVs pull up outside. Men in suits poured out, armed and determined. I grabbed a chair and barricaded the door while Jacob continued the stream. "We need more time," he said. "We don't have it," I replied, bracing for the inevitable. The door burst open, and chaos erupted. I fought off the first man who entered, swinging a heavy lamp at his head. Jacob tried to shield his laptop as more men stormed in. Oliver stayed hidden, clutching the whistle I'd given him. When one of the men got too close, he blew it with all his might, startling them and buying us precious seconds. The police arrived just in time, sirens blaring and lights flashing. Officers swarmed the house, arresting the intruders and securing the evidence. In the aftermath, one of the officers approached me with news. "We found something during the raid," he said. "A location that matches one of the addresses on your drive. It was a warehouse on the outskirts of town. They believed Lily might be there." Oliver clutched my hand as we drove to the site, his face pale but determined. "Do you think she's okay?" he asked. "We'll find her," I said, trying to sound confident. The raid on the warehouse was swift and brutal. Inside, the police found Lily, barely conscious but alive. When she saw Oliver, her face crumpled with emotion. "Mom!" Oliver cried, running to her. Lily collapsed to her knees, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I thought I'd lost you," she sobbed. I watched them reunite, tears streaming down my face. The weight of everything we'd been through finally hit me, but seeing them together made it all worth it. The evidence from the flash drive, combined with the arrests, dismantled Grey Phoenix. Arthur Kane and his associates were convicted on multiple charges, their empire crumbling under the weight of their crimes. The story went viral, and public outrage led to widespread reforms. Survivors began coming forward, inspired by the bravery of Lily and Oliver. Months later, I visited Lily and Oliver in their new home, deep in witness protection. They were safe, happy, and beginning to heal. "You saved us," Lily said, hugging me tightly. "No," I replied. "You saved yourselves. I just helped." As I watched Oliver play in the yard, his laughter filling the air, I felt a sense of peace. The journey had been harrowing, but it had led to something beautiful, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always hope.